Revolutionary insights emerge when ancient wisdom meets cutting-edge research, revealing patterns about human psychology that challenge everything that we thought we knew about national character, family consciousness, and the hidden forces shaping our collective behavior. I'm Mark Roach. Welcome back to Transcendent. Today we're examining chapters 34 through 36 of Gurdjieff's masterwork, where Beelzebub's observations of Russian and German psychology illuminate findings in contemporary research about authoritarian personalities, transgenerational trauma, and the mechanisms of cultural transmission. The 34th teaching, The Psychology of Russian Authoritarianism, Chapter 34 takes us into Beelzebub's encounter with a Russian official near the pyramids, leading to his invitation to observe a Russian society during a period of revolutionary transformation. This chapter provides extraordinary insights into what modern research now validates as distinctive Russian psychological patterns that persist across centuries. Beelzebub identifies several core characteristics of Russian psychology: extremism and emotional expression, with Russian tending toward intense manifestations of both positive and negative emotions, collective suffering as spiritual practice, embracing suffering as a means of purification without understanding its proper function, autocratic submission and combined with periodic explosive rebellion and mystical tendencies pursued through extreme rather than balanced means. Contemporary research on Russian authoritarianism validates these observations with remarkable precision. A large-scale 2022 study of right-wing authoritarianism in Russia involved 1,358 participants, and it reveals that Russian authoritarian personality patterns mirror Western authoritarians in basic structure but differ significantly in cultural expression. The research shows that agreeable Russians, those with personality traits associated with maintaining positive social relations, actually showed the highest levels of regime support. This finding overturns conventional wisdom about personality in politics. In democratic societies, consciousness and openness to experience predict political engagement. But in an authoritarian context, agreeableness becomes the primary factor determining political attitudes. Agreeable Russians support the regime not because they're politically engaged, but because they prioritize social harmony over individual principles. The mechanism operates through what researchers call social conformity pressure. Agreeable personalities naturally adapt to prevailing social norms rather than challenging them. In authoritarian environments, this means supporting whatever maintains group cohesion, even when those policies conflict with personal values or rational analysis. Current research on locus of control in Russian psychology demonstrates that Russians score significantly higher on external locus of control compared to citizens of liberal democracies. This means that they attribute life outcomes to external forces like fate, luck, or authority rather than personal agency. This psychological orientation creates predisposition towards accepting authoritarian leadership as natural rather than chosen. The revolutionary context Beelzebub observed mirrors contemporary dynamics. Russian revolutionary fervor operates through the same psychological mechanisms. Accumulated frustration with extreme control eventually explodes into violent rebellion, but because the underlying psychology remains unchanged, new forms of authoritarianism replace the old ones. Political change without corresponding psychological development creates cycles of revolution and reaction rather than genuine progress. The 35th teaching, Cosmic Family Relationships and Transgenerational Consciousness. Chapter 35 reveals Beelzebub's family relationships through his decision to visit his son, Tuelian family, on the holy planet Purgatory, and his spiritual teacher, the great Saranusyan. This chapter demonstrates that even highly developed cosmic beings maintain deep emotional connections across generations and express continuous gratitude towards their teachers. Beelzebub's immediate agreement to the detour reveals profound dimensions of his character. Despite cosmic status and responsibilities, he maintains genuine care for family relationships spanning generations and cosmic distances. His request to visit his spiritual teacher demonstrates that authentic development increases rather than decreases capacity for gratitude and recognition of the sources of wisdom. Modern research on family constellation therapy validates Gurdjieff's understanding of transgenerational consciousness transmission. Studies show that family systems operate as morphogenetic fields where traumatic memories and behavioral patterns they transfer across generations through mechanisms science is only beginning to understand. A 2021 systemic review of family constellation therapy involved 568 participants across 12 studies demonstrates significant improvements in mental health outcomes with moderate effect sizes. The therapy works by bringing unconscious family system dynamics into awareness, allowing individuals to recognize how they're unconsciously repeating ancestral patterns of suffering or limitation. Research on transgenerational trauma reveals that difficult ancestral experiences can affect descendants. 50 to 60 constellation therapists, or 50 to 60 years later, through what family constellation therapists call entangled love. Children unconsciously take on the emotional burdens of parents or grandparents attempting to ease family suffering through their own sacrifice. This creates mechanical patterns of suffering that persist until consciously recognized and resolved. The concept of morphogenetic fields suggests that families operate as interconnected consciousness systems where individual psychological changes affect all members. When one person resolves transgenerational entanglements through conscious work, it can free other family members from similar patterns even without their direct participation. Beelzebub's relationship with his teacher demonstrates proper hierarchy in conscious development. Even highly developed beings maintain gratitude towards those who contributed to their formation. This creates what researchers call cosmic consciousness, the recognition that individual development occurs within larger evolutionary processes requiring acknowledgement of sources and contribution through teaching others. Contemporary research on cosmic consciousness describes states of awareness characterized by joyfulness, sense of universal meaning, loss of fear of death, and recognition of fundamental interconnectedness. These states naturally arise when individuals recognize their place within the larger evolutionary processes rather than pursuing development for personal advantage. The 36th teaching, the science of German cultural behavior. Chapter 36 presents Beelzebub's analysis of German psychology through pedagogical innovation, challenging his grandson to solve a puzzle about German collective behavior rather than providing direct explanation. Germans invariably sing blood sin, nonsense, nonsense during gatherings, revealing mechanical patterns in collective cultural expression. This methodological approach demonstrates advanced teachings of principles, active learning through student mental effort rather than passive information reception, cultural analysis through observation of seemingly trivial behavioral details, and puzzle solving as development of analytical capabilities for understanding psychological patterns. Contemporary research on German-American cultural differences validates Beelzebub's insights about German psychological patterns. A comprehensive study of 5,188 meeting behaviors in German and U.S. teams reveals systemic differences. German teams focus significantly more on problem analysis, while U.S. teams focus more on solution production. German meetings contain significantly more procedural behaviors and counteractive behaviors like complaining. U.S. teams show more positive socio-emotional meeting behavior. The research reveals German team meetings that they average 52 complaining statements compared to only 2 positive action planning statements. This pattern reflects that researchers identify as German cultural emphasis on thorough problem analysis and honest criticism, even when it creates negative emotional atmospheres. German cultural research using Hofstede's dimensions confirms distinctive psychological patterns: high uncertainty avoidance creating preference for detailed procedures and rules, masculinity orientation emphasizing competition and achievement over relationship harmony, and individualism combined with strong institutional loyalty creating apparent contradictions in behavior. The blood sin phenomenon represents what research identifies as German tendencies toward mechanical repetition without understanding, collective conformity on social situations, enthusiasm for meaningless activities when performed in groups, and substitution of ritual for genuine content. These patterns emerge from psychological need for the group belonging, combined with cultural emphasis on following established procedures. Modern neuroscience research on collective behavior demonstrates that group activities trigger mirror neuron systems that synchronize brain activity amongst participants. When groups engage in repetitive behaviors like chanting or singing, individual critical thinking diminishes while group conformity increases. This explains why seemingly intelligent people participate enthusiastically in objectively meaningless activities when they're performed collectively. The integration here: cultural psychology and individual development. These 3 chapters reveal the profound interconnection between individual psychology and cultural conditioning. Russian authoritarian patterns, transgenerational family consciousness, and German collective behaviors all demonstrate how national and cultural psychology shapes individual development, while individual consciousness affects collective patterns. The Russian material shows how personality traits interact with political systems to create self-perpetuating cycles of authoritarianism. Agreeable personalities naturally support whatever maintains social harmony, making them ideal citizens for authoritarian regimes that claim to represent collective will. This explains why Russian authoritarianism persists across different political systems. The underlying psychology remains constant despite surface changes. The family consciousness material reveals that individual development cannot be separate from transgenerational patterns. We inherit not just genetic material, but psychological and emotional patterns from ancestors. These inherited patterns operate unconsciously unless brought to awareness through conscious work or therapeutic intervention. The German material demonstrated how cultural patterns become embedded in collective behavior that operates below the level of conscious awareness. People participate in cultural activities without understanding their psychological functions, creating mechanical transmission of patterns across generations. For contemporary individuals, these insights provide practical guidance for conscious development. Recognize how your personality traits interact with political and social environments to create either conscious participation or mechanical conformity. Understand that family patterns affect your psychology across generations, that healing work benefits not just yourself, but your entire family system. More importantly, develop the capacity for active thinking rather than passive absorption of cultural patterns. The pedagogical method Beelzebub demonstrates with Hussein provides a model for approaching cultural analysis. Observe behavior details, look for underlying patterns, and develop understanding through sustained mental effort rather than accepting conventional explanations. This research validating Gurdjieff's observations suggests that cultural psychology operates according to discoverable laws rather than random variation. National characteristics, family consciousness transmission, and collective behavioral patterns can be understood scientifically when approached with proper methods and sufficient data. This knowledge provides hope that both individual and collective development are possible when approached with genuine understanding rather than good intentions alone. But it also reveals why change is so difficult. The psychological patterns that maintain unconscious cultural transmission operate below the level of ordinary awareness and that are required to sustain conscious efforts to modify them. The question isn't whether cultural conditioning affects individual development. The question is whether you'll participate consciously in cultural patterns or remain mechanically driven by them. Understanding the scientific basis of cultural psychology provides tools for conscious participation rather than mechanical conformity. But applying this understanding requires the kind of active thinking that most people prefer to avoid. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.